You know where you are!
This is Appetite for Distortion.
Welcome to the podcast, Appetite for Distortion, episode number 489. My name is Brando. Welcome back to the podcast. Mr. Todd Kerns, you know better than to talk during my intro.
Oh, wow. I'm not going to be asked back after that.
No, not at all. You can
Your
say
stage
whatever.
your stage manager's like, that's it, brother. You're out.
No, because we were just bullshitting and talking before we even hit record. I guess we wanted to catch up before we
Of
did.
course,
So it's
yeah.
like we were just in mid conversation essentially, and I'm like, let's just hit record. So
Exactly. Otherwise, all the gold will just be spent.
yeah, but some things are meant for off air, and sometimes insider jokes, things. I don't know.
Of
I don't want to have.
course.
I don't want to have too many wink, wink, nudge, nudges. If
Exactly, yeah.
people listening just in audio only, they won't see that. So
No,
they-
exactly, yeah. We want everybody in on the joke.
So are you in your home base of Vegas right now?
I am, and I'm actually delighted. It's funny because I just came back from NAMM, in Anaheim.
You have to explain that. You
Yeah,
haven't
yeah.
gone back to from that to the 60s.
No,
Be a fucking name. No.
yeah, no, I don't have a time machine in my house, and I wouldn't refer to Vietnam now as NAM, but no, NAM is the National Association of Music Merchants, I believe it's called. I might be saying that totally wrong, but
I
it's
think you're right.
it's basically a convention for all the music, guitar companies, drums, everything, microphones, anything you can imagine, trombones, whatever you can think of. They do that in Anaheim. So I went down there on Thursday. I was supposed to play a fill-in gig with Ace Frehley's band this weekend. On Saturday, it snowed in New Orleans, and they were 1,000,000% unprepared and had to cancel basically everything. They were apparently bringing down equipment from like Wisconsin, like snow plows and stuff like that, because they are
Unreal.
completely unprepared for it. And I was like, it's funny because as soon as I saw somebody show me this like on their phone, dude, check it out, that's New Orleans, and I immediately went in my head like, oh, that's not happening. So there's a part of me that's kind of like super bummed because I played like a few things with Ace. I'm one of those guys. I played, let's see, 3 out of the 4 original Kiss members I've been on stage with. Quite a few of the replacement guys I've been on stage with. And but this would have been the first time I played a show with Ace. I can also say similar things about Guns N' Roses. It's I was just thinking to myself the other day how cool it is to be able to say, I've been on stage with original members of these things that are a big deal to me, and it's but long story short, that didn't happen. So I'm home, and my wife and I were like it's almost embarrassing to admit how quickly my wife and I are so in sync when it comes to like, oh, it's that The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Lived. We haven't watched this. Boom, knock off 6 episodes. The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. Boom, into season 2 already. It's just kind of like one of those funny things where I'm like, because going through that entire The Walking Dead. You want to hear a funny story about The Walking Dead?
I do. I would love
this
that.
sort of connects with your world because Greg Nicotero is a good friend of Slash's, and Greg Nicotero he's worked on all kinds of crazy stuff.
He's
in the
on my
past.
guest bucket list. I haven't officially reached out. I don't know how to reach out, but I would love to get him. Anyway, continue.
He's great, but he's a friend of Slash's, and in the very beginning, I was like, I would talk it up to Slash. I'm like, you haven't seen The Walking Dead? Because he's a horror guy, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, it's from a comic book. Robert Kirkland made this comic book, and it's fucking awesome. And the fucking show is so great. And he's like, he was just kind of like, I don't know. And then like suddenly he was like, I think we were on some sort of break, and he just like devoured like season 1. And he was like, yeah, okay, cool. And then all of a sudden he was like in Atlanta on the set, and like Norman Reedus is a homie and Greg's a homie, and I'm like, God damn, man. I just loved witnessing it, because then of course on the next tour we would all have these like Walking Dead nights. If the show was on, we would, hunker down and watch the show together. So,
That's
but
cool.
it's the funniest thing with me and Slash is that like half the time if I'm in contact with him, I've been in contact with him because I was going, have you seen this? This is these sort of spin-offs of The Walking Dead, and he sort of talks me through, oh yeah, that one's cool, this is cool. I went to see The Wolfman, which was kind of underwhelming, but we went back and forth. It's always about movies, and usually about horror movies when we go back and forth. It's rarely about music. It's like it's always about like, have you seen The Substance? Have you seen whatever, all those kind of things. And but I really do trust he loves a really good gory slasher flick. I'm kind of more like, I like a great film or a great show. The gore aspect can be there or not be there, but I still kind of like, it's a great movie. I'm certainly one of those guys who can go, oh yeah, that movie was terrible, but there were some amazing killings in it.
Right. Right.
And he just comes on the bus sometimes with stacks of DVDs. Well, not so much anymore, but we used to. And it would be all like super like, indie B horror movies. And they would be off the charts violent and gory. And I was usually the only one that could handle it. Everybody else was like, oh man. And I'd be like, Brent Fitz can't even stand the sight of blood. I'm like, how can we watch anything with you? It's like, romantic comedies. What are we supposed to watch? And he would just wander off to the back of the bus because we'd be up there just watching just Splatterfest, But anyway, so that was a long story short of me saying I'm home. I'm loving being home. 2024 was absolutely bananas. 2025 is getting bananas, but right now I'm kind of like at home, getting ready for this fill-in gig with Michael Monroe's band's coming over. Yeah. Michael Monroe, of course, from Hanoi Rocks, which is another huge connection to Guns N' Roses. And so, I got a bunch of other stuff coming up. My band Tukaz, we're currently writing and recording some new music. And, it's just being busy, really. It's kind of, but right now, busy in my house talking to Brando. Drinking Tim Hortons coffee. Yeah.
Tim Hortons. That's when you're talking to a real Canadian. Yeah.
Embarrassingly Canadian. Yeah.
The only time I ever went was when it always sounds like a made up story when you say I had a girlfriend in Canada. I really did. I really did. And I was like, what's Tim Hortons? What's Canadian Tire? What are these places?
Canadian Tire, yes.
Yeah, she used to work at one. But
that's hysterical.
Before we get into all the bananas for this year, just to jump off The Walking Dead because you're talking to, me.
Sorry.
I'm a horror guy. I had a short-lived I'm not sure. It's on pause because of the child, my appetite for horror podcast. Because I noticed.
Well, call me sometime. I'm not what I would call a big horror guy. Like I said, I like great movies, and a lot of them are horror movies. But I will say that I don't necessarily jump into everything just because I have friends who literally would just all they want to watch is horror movies, and I'm like, this is a terrible movie. Like, regardless of of what you want to call it, it's just not a good film. And I think that's true in most categories,
Look, my dream is to have this conversation, not just with you, but with Slash, because I am that person. Now if you're still a physical media guy, like Del James is always, his Twitter account is amazing. He's always talking about old films and physical media. And he's definitely a huge horror guy as well. But Tubi, TUBI is such a free site that has such a collection of old school horror movies.
Really?
Just do me a favor. Just mention this one to Slash, okay? And maybe you'll tell me what he says.
Okay.
It's so low budget. L.A. AIDS Jabber. I'll repeat it. L.A. AIDS Jabber. It is what it sounds like. It's about a guy.
What year did this come out?
Early 90s.
Oh, for
90s.
real?
Yeah. I mean, there are some really obviously shitty ones in the 70s. I don't know if you ever saw it's The Bed That Eats. The Bed.
Of course.
Who Eats.
The Bed That Eats People.
Yeah. With the dad from Boy Meets World. That was one of his early roles. Was in that. But
wow.
80s where
the funny thing is, it's like I was young enough to not be discerning about the quality of this film. I think that the 80s was just a treasure trove of like insanity that we just
whatever they thought of.
Yeah. And there was it's like Patton Oswalt talks about that with The Bed That Eats People.
Yes,
it's kind of like, it's like, like budgets are in place, catering. It's like we're building sets. We're gonna make the bed that eats people. You're like, and I would think that every time, now when I watch those movies in retrospect, I'm like, you're like, whether it's Sleepaway Camp or whatever, you're like, green light, baby, green light. It's like whatever the script is. It's almost kind of like, well, how gory can you make it? Perfect, boom, make it. Here's a check. Go make that movie. I don't know that it's quite like that so much anymore, because horror has become a lot more sophisticated in many ways. Of course, it's also not sophisticated, but there seems to be almost sort of more of a respected genre in and of itself too.
To combine the two, and then because we can spend the half an hour talking about horror.
We're down a rabbit hole, yeah.
Is Terrifier. I haven't seen the new one yet.
I haven't either. I don't think I've seen any of them, but I know Chris Jericho is my friend Chris Jericho is in 3. Somehow he's
in the end of the second one. So
is that what it is? Okay.
I don't know if he's in the third one. I'm not sure, but I know
I thought he was, but maybe I'm understanding that wrong. But yeah, okay. I'll have to check out
They're both on TV.
Everybody tells me about that, and I'm always like, okay, I'll get around. I figure that's one of those bus watches with Slash. I'll talk him into putting on the Terrifier trilogy.
It's some people will just think it's torture porn or gore porn. I think it's a throwback. I think the way that they're shot is just beautiful. I think it's just kind of like really just going back in the 80s and just making everything spiffy and new. And there's a scene. You'll know. Get back to me after you tell Slash about the LA AIDS jabber.
Yeah, okay.
Watch Terrifier 1. There is a specific scene that'll.
Everybody tells me about that. Yeah.
All right, get ready.
But we're not. He and I are both in agreement that the torture stuff is a little rough. But I think that most of us can survive. It's like I always imagine, like, my daughter just got married, and I keep thinking to myself, I was just making a joke to my wife. It's like, and then we'll sit the grandkids down and go, this is called The Walking Dead or whatever, or like this is called Terrifier or this is called Friday the 13th, just the idea of imagining that experience with a grandchild at the proper age, mind you.
One day, I'm telling you, I'm going to tell Baby Brownstone, Harrison Rex, that his father's favorite movie of all time is Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Amazing.
And we're gonna watch it together.
Yeah, I think you should.
He's going to think his father is not just physically disabled. He's going to think something's wrong with me, which is kind of true. But
the disappointing thing is when you play something for your kids that you think is. I remember my kids they had started to get into stuff like The Sixth Sense, and then like The Ring. There was a great '90s run of cool horror stuff that was starting to happen. And I just happened to be like one of those blockbuster nights, probably not even blockbuster by that point, probably. And I was like, you guys have never seen The Creep Show. I loved The Creep Show when I was a kid. And they were just like, this is stupid. And it was so disappointing. You were like, yeah, because, objectively watching it now, I was like, yeah, this is pretty dumb. But at the time, it was great.
At the time, this was really great. And, you had to be there.
And even now you watch it with this sort of like cartoony kind of comic book aspect to it. That's kind of fun. But they were just kind of like, they weren't getting it. And I think that, like I said, horror has become so much more sophisticated that it's a different thing. Yeah.
Well, that segues into, my son. I thought I knew what he liked. How dare I start assuming things? He's not even 2 yet.
Yeah.
It's really been.
How dare you assume he's not going to have his own tastes? Yeah.
Yeah. That it's not going to change.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That basically since he was born, the TV show that really he gravitated towards was Blue's Clues.
Sure.
It's recently now that he's like, he doesn't want it. I'm like, oh my God, he's starting to change. So obviously that lends itself to, I'm sure he's going to grow up to hate Guns N' Roses. I'm sure it's going to happen. I mean, my wife grew up hating the Beatles because of her mom, because she was being crammed down her throat, and then she ended up loving them, and now naming our son after George.
There you go.
But he's going to have a lot of episodes talking about Guns N' Roses, and I'm telling you. So that's the segue here, because you brought back songs that we Guns N' Roses fans have not heard live. One of them, which has never been heard live.
Yeah.
As in Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators. So this was the most recent tour.
Yes.
You played Perfect Crime, Bad Apples.
Yes.
And Don't Damn Me. And not just play, you sing, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
And I Don't Damn Me, which has never been played ever by Guns N'
Yeah.
Roses. So I guess
Yeah.
my first question is, how did that conversation come up?
Well, it's funny with him because anybody who knows, even I say all the time, I just joined Slash's band. I was the bass player. I didn't know if that was going to last a few months of just kind of supporting the 2010 solo album, and then we were never going to play together again, or it was going to be 15 years later and I'll be talking to you about this. It's like that. And that's literally where we're at. Is it's kind of like, as time went by, it was kind of like, it started with Dr. Alibi, and We're All Gonna Die, where Myles was like, that's not really my jam, why don't you sing them? And I was kind of like, okay. And then all of a sudden it'd be like mid-tour, it'd be like, do you know the words to Out to Get Me? I'd be like, yeah, I could do it right now. What about, it would just be random things like that. And the weird thing about it is this savant kind of ability to just call up songs that are just sort of in there somewhere. People keep saying to me, even more recently than ever, they're kind of like, how are you going from a Kiss charity show into a Slash thing, into a Toque thing, into, and I'm like, because those are all different categories of music just sort of stuck in my brain. It does mean sometimes I have to kind of refresh, but it does come up. So when something like Don't Damn Me comes up, it's funny because it's one of those things that Slash really loves that song. Like he really feels connected. That's his riff. That's his riff. He just loved that riff. And he goes, we never played it live. I'd love to try it. And I go, well, let me listen to it. And we're in the middle of rehearsals for the last run, or not in the middle, but at the beginning of rehearsals. And I listen to it and I go, oh man, it's one of those if you call it up on your phone, it's one of those classic Axl songs where you're like scrolling. I had to do a Led Zeppelin one once where we did stuff like Kashmir or Fool in the Rain. And it's just like the lyrics just go on and on and on. It's kind of like, I could just imagine him sitting at a typewriter going, and you're like, whoa, you got to sing this. You got to remember this live, At least in Axl's case, I don't know what it's like up there, but I assume at their level of technology that there's probably a teleprompter there.
Yeah.
But teleprompters are not, everybody goes like, that's cheating. I go, no, teleprompters are there because you're running around, you're doing your thing. Somebody, you trip over a cable and you get kind of like, and you get to look down and it goes, oh, okay. And you just kind of remember and then off you go. And it happens to me all the time. It's like, you'll just be sitting there playing a song, singing along, and you look at some guy's t-shirt and go, what does that say? And you'll be completely pulled out of the moment of like,
you're human, sure.
What's this next line? But that song, Don't Damn Me, just goes on and on and on and on and on. So it was really, Don't Damn Me. I'm like that was my whole world. The whole time I'm like going over all the other music, but at the same time, every brief second I had was like, it's just like perpetually going over those lyrics. And I sort of said, because then Bad Apples was the other one Slash brought up. He said, and I'd also like to take a look at Bad Apples at some point. I go, okay, well, we're going to focus on Don't Damn Me because that's going to be a bitch.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get into the tour and we do, once that song has become kind of like clockwork, then we'll add Bad Apples. And then Frank was the one that brought up Perfect Crime. He was like, can we do Perfect Crime? And Slash was like, that's the best thing about Slash is he rarely kind of goes like an emphatic yeah or anything like that. That's kind of more like a huh. And then like a week, a little while later, he'll be like, yeah, okay, let's try,
You said that, I remember you said the same thing in our last interview. And it's consistent. I love that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't really like, I think he's careful with, I think he wants to think about it and go, I guess it has been a long time since Perfect Crime has been performed live. And, I think like anything else, it's kind of like if we just jammed something and it felt good. The one song he pitched at me a long time ago was Garden of Eden, which, the rambling.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like it's my favorite video. One of my favorite.
It's the greatest. Yeah. It's one of the greatest of all time. And, but it was like, okay. And then you go put on your buds and you go, good Lord. You go, yeah. Like not only do you need to like have a teleprompter, you would need 10 of them to kind of follow.
Well, they have a video with a bouncing ball over the lyrics to help you out.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know I doubt that was ever performed live because it's bananas. Like it's just like the one thing about Axl and maybe Dell and those guys, whoever was involved, and probably Izzy to some degree too, is that they were never at a loss for words. And if anything, they just kind of loved to throw down. And I think that's kind of part of the charm of the song. So that one I kind of got a little gun shy on, and I was like, oh, not more than a little gun shy. I was kind of like, oh, this is just too much work, really. I mean, I don't know that anybody could sit down and memorize the words to that song. But then Don't Damn Me, because I'm always the guy that's kind of like, yeah, that sounds like fun. And then I go home and listen, and I go, what have I just agreed to? It's kind of like, I do that in the Kiss camp too. Like Bruce Kulick will ask me, here's a list of songs. And I go, cool. And I go home and I go, oh my God, because Paul Stanley was singing at the peak of his range back then and all that kind of stuff. So, but it's part of the, it's part of the weird challenge that I complain about, yet also can't live without at the same time. It's kind of like my wife always kind of giggles at me because I'm kind of like, oh my God, I got it. She's like, no one put a gun to your head and told you to do this. You actually agreed to this. And if sometimes you offered it up, like, I kind of like, yeah, you're right. So I just, and they say it's really good for your brain to kind of like learn new music, learn new words, learn,
Yeah.
And I go, okay. So I kind of take the challenge now. Like, it's weird going through this whole weekend that just came by and Ace Frehley canceled, but learning a bunch of new music, not a bunch, I kind of knew most of it, but a few. And then people are like, I am so sorry for making you do all that work. I go, dude, no, it's like, first of all, it's a pleasure to do it. I enjoy learning music. It's good for my brain. And, it immediately goes in the delete file as soon as I'm not using it. So stuff like Don't Damn Me, I wonder if you put a gun to my head right now, if I could play it for you and sing all the words note for note. It might be interesting to see where that is within the deep recesses of my brain, like pulling out that song. But yeah, between that one and Bad Apples and Perfect Crime, Bad Apples was nuts. Bad Apples is also what Duff McKagan is playing is not in any way related to what Axl is singing. Like, in no way is Axl thinking, what's Duff playing while I'm singing this? And Duff isn't thinking, what's Axl singing while I'm playing this? I'm playing the bass line, he's singing the lead vocal. And this happens to me all the time as a musician who sings, is that sometimes you'll be like playing cover songs and someone will say, let's do this. And you'll go, the bass player could never have played and sang the song because they're completely conflicting parts. But a lot of that I got accustomed to when I was a kid. I was really into the Police, learning Sting bass lines while singing. And his stuff never, often it does jive, but it is very much like this part of your brain, this is the bass, that's the vocals. And you just have to kind of learn and become comfortable with it. I was really comforted by reading Getty Lee's book because it was always kind of like, look at this fucking guy. Yeah. He's up there playing keyboards and bass and foot pedals and singing, and you're like, and it just makes you feel like an idiot. But it was comforting to hear him say how much he really has to rehearse that till it's muscle memory. And I go, oh, okay, well, that's comforting to know. Otherwise he's basically superhuman anyway. But I think the fact that it actually takes a little bit for him to be superhuman is like comforting. So it's kind of what I have to do with songs like that is you learn the bass part and you learn the vocal, and then you try to somehow put it into a big stew that works together. It's a lot of work.
Do you do one first before the other, learning it, or is it together?
I think sometimes I'll just pick up the bass and kind of figure out the arrangement of what's going on, and then the vocal is a totally separate thing. And some songs are easier than others. Some just kind of like flow, and then some are like, because there's a lot going on in songs like Bad Apples where Duff is really good at coming up with these kind of funky walking lines and stuff like that. And I hate sacrificing some certain parts because it can't be sung and done at the same time. It happens sometimes, but I try to be as faithful to it as I can. And then Axl's no joke. Honestly, Axl's, vocals are amongst the most challenging in the history of rock and roll. You know what I'm saying?
Do you try, because I know you have your own voice, but do you ever find yourself slipping into doing an Axl a little bit?
Well, I think a lot of it is kind of like sort of unavoidable. It's in certain parts, but I also don't try to be like, I don't want it to be kind of like a parody of sorts. Like it's kind of like fucking Weird Al or something, it's like, I'm not trying to like, it's not a comedy act to me or like an impression as much as I'm just trying to sing the song. And when he gets up into his higher range and all that, it's kind of like, it's no joke. Straight up, it's like he's like, you know, one of the most challenging voices there is. And then, but yeah, there are ways he pronounces words and things like that if you pronounce it any other way, it just doesn't sound right. So you have to kind of put an axle on there. Yeah.
Sure. Cool. And by the way, Garden of Eden has been played live, but
Has it?
only like a couple times, maybe once. The only songs that they have never played live, Don't Damn Me, and now because of Todd Damn It Kerns, it has been played live, at least with Slash. Get in the Ring, so maybe
Okay.
that Shotgun Blues,
Really?
and My World. I don't know.
Okay, sure. Yeah, My World. Yeah, yeah. What
don't know
what about from Democracy?
I think I think
Sorry,
they've
I don't
all
want
been
to.
played live.
Oh,
This is
have they?
just
Okay.
a quick AI overview is just saying that these are the
Okay.
four. I don't recall, as I'm just going through the Rolodex in my brain of all the songs. I think they've all been played.
Or even
Between
Spaghetti Incident.
Prostitute.
I mean, there's going to be stuff from their catalog that's
Yeah,
not
from
been
the
played.
Spaghetti Incident, I'm sure. Yeah. So
But
I guess we're talking originals here. I guess so. Yeah, as far as originals go. Because yeah, they haven't played everything from a Spaghetti, that I know for sure. They haven't played everything.
yeah, of course. But you know those were cover songs anyway. But yeah, I
Because
think
it's
that's kind of the fun part about a band like that is the catalog is, well, it's not as vast as it could be, but it is quite vast. You know.
it, it's funny because I want to see if I can bring this guy's tweet about you up, because he said he was at a show and this is when you played Bad Apples, but unfortunately I want to find his name, that he was the only one that knew all the words. So like it was just kind of funny that came out. Do you get like a certain reaction when do you recall certain reactions when you played any of those three songs? Don't Damn
Oh
Me, or
yeah,
Perfect
yeah.
Crime, Bad Crime. Like what were they? Because they were obviously surprises.
Well, Don't Damn Me became like I think it started to precede us in a way. Like it did start to kind of in the first initial shows. It sort of the word went out, you know what I mean, and the YouTube footage went out, and people became aware that it was being played. So that when it was played, there was a big reaction, and there was South America. Keep in mind, we started down there in Latin America, where that stuff. It's like I do the Kiss World, Kiss Camp as well. We play songs, and I find that the deeper the cuts, the bigger the reaction in a way within that community, within the deep hardcore fan community. You know what I mean? Saying the average person, no matter what you do, there's going to be like more of the average person that's going to know, the hits, and then the deeper you dig, you start to lose people. But the hardcores appreciate when you make that effort. You know what I mean? I think that they truly appreciate it. So I did notice, like some of the reactions were pretty huge, and I think that that's kind of, I wouldn't say it was to be expected, but it was more of an appreciation than it was like, because in some cases it may not even be the fact that Bad Apples is your favorite song anyway, but it's the fact that these guys are playing it that we appreciate that. That's kind of how we look at it.
This is I found another comment that's still worthy from Troy Candy. Love Todd Kerns, such a brilliant player, but also a hell of a
Thank you.
singer. Those tunes are hard to sing, and he does an amazing job. Great
Oh,
guy too. Can't wait for the record. Speaking of GNR tunes, ask him if there are any in particular, more of the obscure ones that you haven't been adding, that you have been adding, that you would like to sing, but you haven't yet. So maybe is there a GNR tune out there that, while you've gone deeper in their catalog, or maybe it's just something off Appetite, that you're like, you know what, that Myles isn't going to sing this one, but I want to sing this one.
well, that's kind of funny too, because later on, things like I have done things like My Michelle and Welcome to the Jungle and something else. I was going to say Thinking of You, but I can't remember what it was. But anyway, there was a few things along the way that Myles just kind of went like with Welcome to the Jungle. He felt very specifically like it's just such a signature Axl thing that it kind of felt like. You have to remember that Axl's one of those. I mean, that Myles is one of those guys that stepped into Scott Stapp's shoes at one point, and then he stepped into essentially Axl's shoes. It's hard to say that Alter Bridge was Creed or that Slash feature Myles Kennedy and his Computers is Guns N' Roses, because they're not. But it is essentially you're stepping into this position where everybody gets out their magnifying glass and goes, okay, now impress me. He didn't
How
have to.
can we compare this to
Yeah,
that person's other band?
exactly. Luckily, he didn't have to sing Creed songs in Alter Bridge. I don't know how that worked, but so that comparison game didn't happen. But within the Guns community, you know, we've heard a million cover bands do "Sweet Child of Mine," but we still fucking know that's fucking Axl's voice. Axl's voice belongs. That's another one of those songs that, you know, you really can. You have to do those things, and that is 100% that guy. You know, nobody else would have thought to do that because that's who he is. That's what he does. So, and he just kind of felt like stuff like Jungle was just so much more of a signature thing that he just kind of felt like, I just feel like sometimes I don't need to attract any extra attention to myself. And I think it was at a time when he was starting to feel more and more like, I just want to focus on what we do and focus on being Myles. You know what I mean? And I go, okay. So suddenly I found myself going like, Jungle. There was a couple nights where Myles, or a couple runs where Myles would get sick, and they'd be like, do you know the words to Rocket Queen? I go, yeah. So there's random times where I would be singing, you know, gun songs just to kind of stretch out a bit of the set so he could have a bit of a break. And, you know, so that kind of stuff. So when you ask, like, is there anything I'd like to sing? I will say that in talking about it now, I do feel like stuff like Garden of Eden feels like a missed opportunity or something that I let myself down on. But at the same time, that's like saying, you know, that marathon I didn't run. You know, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of like, oh God, I just don't know that it's really. It might be a lot more than you know, more to bite off than I could chew. And I think that, but at the same time, saying it and realizing that it was something asked of me, and my inability to come through sort of is not the way I operate. I'm usually like, okay, let's do that. You know, and I go home and I kill myself going, don't damn me, like lying in bed, driving, don't damn me. You know, it's like your whole life is like standing at the bank in line. The lady asks, can I help you, sir? Don't damn me. It's like, you just kind of like, you know, your whole world is just kind of learning this song. But I feel like if we were going to tour, who knows when we'll tour next, late 25, early 26, that's me just being, because I don't really know. But I would start working on the Garden of Eden today. Yeah, you know, and maybe I might have it by the time we get to rehearsals. You know, who knows?
Right on. And that's a nice little segue, because at some point I would have asked about a tour.
You're like how I got ahead of that? Not my first rodeo. It's my second rodeo.
No, not at all. I mean, you're a cowboy, man. You're the Canadian cowboy.
On a steel horse I ride.
Yeah, don't do a spit take, man. I don't need the keyboard frying on us.
Yeah, exactly.
So obviously, because Guns N' Roses have announced European tours, so there's no.
Yes.
I know Slash likes to fit in dates here and there with other projects, but obviously Slash with Myles Kennedy, the Conspirators.
We'll go out with a sub, like some other guy playing guitar for us.
Oh,
could you imagine?
You're the sub. You're someone else for Slash. Yeah, that would be weird.
It'd be like Slash featuring Myles Kennedy and the Conspirators featuring Dave Navarro or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's how some bands are today, though.
I know it really can be. Yeah.
So
that would never happen, just so you know, because there's people go like, "What if he gets sick?" I go, Slash is one of those people who has been incapacitated in many ways. First of all, I didn't know about it. Second of all, he still played a show. He wouldn't even have thought twice about it. He's like, it doesn't matter if like there's a storm in town and no one can get to the gig or any of these kinds of things. It's like the show goes on and he's the last guy that will not do the gig. That's just how he rolls. But go ahead.
And I don't know if you can answer this now, just because it's timely. There was a picture that Eddie Trunk shared of Duff and him. They're both going to talk on a documentary to Eddie.
I'm supposed to see him this week, so I was actually going to get down with that myself. I think it's from what I understand, a documentary about Ed. Eddie's life career, whatever. I don't know.
Radio career, yeah, longest.
Yeah, so I guess Duff and Slash are going to appear in it or whatever, or talking to Ed about it, which I think is really cool.
No, absolutely, and anything that puts the focus on radio in itself and just the world. And what Eddie, whether I'm a fan, but what I mean,
Yeah.
whether you're a fan or not, because I know he could be a hot topic for some. I mean, he did a lot for radio and in a
Yeah.
genre that needed fighting
Absolutely. Yeah.
for. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
in that photo, and you could say I don't know, Slash is wearing what looks like a brace on his wrist.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you know what that's about?
I don't. I know he's been working on some I was going to say muscle type stuff. So I don't know if that's what he's had done there. So I don't know if that was just kind of like like a carpal tunnel kind of thing or what's going on, but I'm not sure. So
Okay.
he's I haven't really it's funny that you mentioned that because somebody else asked me that. I go, I have no idea. I assume he's maybe he's just resting it for the tour. Who knows? I don't know. He's like I say, that guy is a machine. So if he's ever taking any kind of break, it would be as his friend, I'd be like, let's take a break. But it's kind of like he's one of those guys. He's just not wired that way. I've said it a million times where I'm like, when he sends me a text and says, "Hey, you want to get together on Thursday?" and I go, "Okay, great." And then I look online and he's flying in from South Africa on Wednesday, and you're like, "What?" I mean, like, take some time, have a break. But he's just wired that way. He's just kind of like loves to be doing stuff. So I don't know. I'm hoping obviously it's not anything serious because otherwise I think it might be just something restful. I don't know.
He should keep it in a glass case like David Duchovny did in Zoolander
Yeah,
when he's the
exactly.
hand model.
Yeah.
uh,
It's
uh,
like
yeah,
clink. Yeah.
clink. Just got to keep it protected. Or George Costanza with the oven mitts when he was a short-lived.
Exactly. Exactly. When he was the hand model. Yeah.
Yeah. So what can you tell us? I know there's been some, little information coming out about the new Slash with Miles record. I guess just where does that stand, and when could we see it? I mean, it's still exciting to know that you're working on it, but what are you able to tell us now?
It's well, we're I would say we're probably halfway through it. We've taken a bit of a hiatus for. I mean, that's the best thing about the funniest thing about this kind of stuff is it's like everybody's off in different directions. I was thinking about this the other day, how it's kind of like even guys like Mark Tremonti. It's got Creed, Alter Bridge, Tremonti. He's singing Sinatra tunes. It's like, he's one of those guys that like everybody's in so many different things. I always think like how weird it must be for a guy like Alex Van Halen to have been in Van Halen, and that's the end of his list of things he's ever done.
Mm.
But what a list, you know what I mean? It's an interesting time. So I think that everybody's kind of like doing other things. It was sort of this window of like, of the four of us essentially, Slash and the Conspirators, to try and get in and record the music. And then we'll eventually get around to singing with Myles, and then I'll come out and all that kind of stuff. So it's, Myles is doing a solo run, and the songs are written like we've all heard the songs, but we went in and sort of focused on the musical side of it so that it'll be sung at some point as well. So it's kind of it's been really interesting, kind of like, we have a window of time to make this record. We will figure out where to place that down the line. So that being release, hopefully I'm hopeful for the end of 25, but I've been around long enough to kind of go, that can easily turn into early 26, no problem, which is messed up to talk about in January of 25. But knowing how it was yesterday, it was January of 2024. So to me, I kind of feel like, it's it just feels like these time goes fast. I mean, like I'm already looking at my calendar booked till pretty much September, and I'm like, wow, it's just like, and you just kind of like, it's like you get on the treadmill and it just takes you all the way to September in the blink of an eye, and you go, whoa, what just happened? And then by then, who knows what we'll be talking about. So I'm hoping that, like I said, I'm hoping it'll be out in the world by then, but it could very easily be 26 at this point. So who knows?
All right. I mean, this is the fact. I mean, you're talking to,
but it's happening. That's the important thing. Yeah.
And that's my point. The fact that,
Yeah.
you're talking to a Guns N' Roses guy that just wants to hear that. It's either happening
Yeah.
or it's not happening.
Yeah,
It's something
exactly. Yeah.
definitive. So, I mean,
No,
patience isn't in my vocabulary. But is there anything,
it's a
is there
and
anything,
a song title, but go ahead.
well, that was the joke. That was the
I know,
joke.
I know. I followed you. I was there with you.
Oh, sorry. Since I
I
was
was
Tony,
driving it home. Yeah.
and that's going over my head. So I missed the joke, I guess. So
I was trying to Ed McMahon, you're Johnny Carson.
you are correct, sir, I guess. Anything as far I know, we're still far away, but is there anything that's been whether you've heard or you've read as far as what Myles has written that has gotten you excited that you can't wait for to put, to
Oh, I
recording?
mean, that's the cool thing about Myles is that he's just so like I'll be honest with you. There have been times in the past where we have songs. I could point out a few. There was one called "The Unholy" on "World on Fire," and a few others where I've been like, "This is going to be have to be an instrumental. There's no way anybody can put a melody to this. It's so crazy." Because sometimes the riffs are so like the riffs become the hooks in a way, and I think that's the interesting thing about a guy like Slash is, I've said it before. The joke to me was always that Slash plays me a riff, and I immediately go, I know that there's gonna be a kid on YouTube playing this riff that I'm witnessing in real time. In a year from now, there's some kid will be playing this riff on YouTube because it's immediately a classic, iconic riff because he's that guy. But Myles has a way of being able to find a melody in there or a song in there. And you and I, it's funny because you and I were talking about pets and losing pets and being separated from our pets and the equivalent of being separated from humans and losing
And we're gonna get to that. That's gonna be
losing people and whatnot. And Myles is the king of that, man. He's the guy that writes songs and you just go, this is the most heartfelt thing I've ever heard a man write about a woman. And you go, oh no, that's about my dog. And you go, okay. And he does it all the time. There's like 2 or 3 different songs he's had where he goes like, yeah, because one time he'll tell me a story and I'll go, this is the most heartbreaking thing I've ever heard. But it's like, so he's that guy. And I think that part of the charm is in 2011 when we were recording 2010, 2011, we were recording Apocalyptic Love. He's the lead singer. He's the sort of, I was, like I said, I was very respectful of his position. And I think it was that real experiment that we kind of like started to kind of create harmonies and parts for me to sing along with him. That I think I gained his confidence that by the next couple records, he was kind of like, he would sing his lead vocal and he'd be like, I'm good. It might be the odd thing here and there. He would sing a octave of himself or like the odd little thing here and there. But most of the time he would just walk away and go like, whatever you're going to do, go for it. I want to make sure you do your thing on top of it. So it's always part of the fun for me is the interesting thing for me, from my perspective, is being there in the very beginning when we're putting the music together and being basically the last guy in the studio because the harmony vocals are amongst the very last things ever recorded on a record. So I'm often there in the very beginning and at the very end. And I remember like singing my parts in World on Fire and then walking into the control room and then calling it up and me going like, hearing it like kind of like as a song with all the harmonies and the solo and everything kind of in it. And I just felt like, this is really special. Like, I just felt like, wow, this is like, I felt like as a fan, I was getting this real kind of like, like I was getting this real great preview of hearing this song before everybody else. And I'm like, except that I'm on this song, so it was kind of like, it's kind of the beauty of that position is being able to kind of like hear these songs finished, hear them, what they're going to sound like in their rough mixes, but hearing them like in their completed form.
I love that. I mean, and I hope to get more of the harmonies between you and Myles. I think that's such a strength of this band. So, hopefully, whether it comes out later the end of this year or the early next year, whenever it comes out, we get to hear more of your. I mean, we're going to hear you on the record throughout, instrumentally, but we want to hear your voice more too. So I think that's kind of the special part of adding not just the Guns N' Roses tracks, but it's adding more Todd to the
Yeah,
set
I mean,
list in a way.
honestly, like I said, I'm very respectful of of Miles's position in that thing. Not only respectful, but kind of like I'm a fan. You know, I mean, I want him to shine, and so whatever I can do to support that is great. I've said to him 1,000 times, like, I don't need to sing these songs. I'm like perfectly happy to just kind of like, and he goes like, no, 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 no. I like the break. You do your thing. It's cool. I'm like, okay. So you know, it's if at any point I felt like I was stepping on anybody's toes or anything like that, but he's always kind of like, no, no, just do your thing. I mean, it's hard to step on Myles Kennedy's toes. He's like, you know, he's like the best at what he does, period. I don't think that there's anybody who can really do what he does in almost any, you know, in any of the things that he does. It's like he's kind of in a league of his own, you know.
Well, it's actually it's a great band because it just seems like you're all team players, and I think that's the best part of being a fan of a band, not just when you just know like they're all friends. And like I love hearing stories about you and Slash don't even talk about music, you talk about horror movies, and it's just like the respect that you and Miles have for each other's roles, and welcoming each other to do different things. It's not just one person, hey, it's going to be this way, and everyone else has got to fall in line. So I think that's why this band has been successful and been able to stay together. Because you said you didn't know if it was going to last 10 months or 10 years, and that's why it's lasted this long and continuing to do so. And I'm telling you, whenever you do tour next, because that's something I have not been able to do, is see a show.
Wow. Okay.
For whatever reason, I'm working at the time. I don't know. But now the fact that I have my son, my wife loves going to shows. I can't wait for the next Slash.
Yeah, well, we'll do it next time we're back east. We'll let you know for sure. Yeah.
Right on. And so you alluded to something just conversationally because we were talking about it before the air, and I know you don't think it's silly, but I feel partially silly saying it. But based upon the responses from everybody on social media, it's not. I'm dedicating this episode to my cat GB.
Yes.
Who passed away. He's over. There's a picture of him wearing a
Love
suit.
I love that.
I don't know if you've ever
I have
seen,
similar ones like that. Yeah. Yeah. We have similar ones.
you see like ads for like you can put your pet's face in like some like oil painting or something like that.
Exactly.
So we have GB in like a nice little suit, and then we have the brothers Blackie and Pig looking like they're army generals.
Amazing.
Piggy we lost a few years ago. Blackie's still kicking. He's 18.
18. Wow.
Yeah. So those were my wife's parents' cats, but we had to take them in at the beginning of the pandemic because her father got Parkinson's and dementia and just couldn't take care of them anymore. So we actually drove 12 hours round trip in a day to because they live in Chicago. We drove to Youngstown, Ohio, to bring these two cats, these two brothers, back to our apartment. Now I was living with 3 cats. I'm already allergic. I didn't know how bad I was until I was suffocating in my own home.
Oh God, yeah.
For real, I would have to go out on the porch. One time it was like 3 a.m. My wife is driving me around in the car so I can breathe. It wasn't until I started getting like shots. I'm like, I don't want to get rid of these cats. They're all older. But I didn't want to leave. My wife was gonna,
What were they shooting you up with exactly? Like some kind of like Benadryl or some kind of?
Well, I go to an allergist, and they specifically do that, and they give you tests for, what you are and what you aren't allergic to, and
they're like, you're 100% allergic to cats. Here's some drugs.
Well, they just wanted to see how much to give you, so they give you like little pricks,
right,
and they see how the reaction is. So I did it for maybe once every week, then once every other week, then once a month. And I probably would still be going, but I had my son and things just got crazy. And then all of a sudden I realized, I'm like, hey, I can kind of breathe now.
Right.
So, but it all started with GB when it was just me, him, and my then girlfriend at the apartment.
What does GB stand for?
Grandpa Bill. I was her Grandpa Bill, even though she spelled it with Geebbee. That's how it was spelled.
I love it.
So it's interesting. I didn't meet him until like our 3rd date or whatever. Otherwise, I would question who I fell in love with first. So I wasn't much of a cat person. I never disliked them. I guess, I grew up with a dog. I was allergic to dogs. I kind of stayed away, really. I wasn't, I like animals, but I just I'd see a dog or a cat, I'd be like, hello, but I wouldn't pet them because
Yeah, exactly.
I
How
knew
are
I'd be
you? Yeah, yeah.
sneezing or rubbing my eyes within minutes.
Hmm.
So, but for whatever reason, I loved her cat. It was like the cutest cat I've ever seen, even though he was a dick, a typical
Yeah,
dick
yeah.
cat that would, only want your affection only when he wanted it, would run away. If you were ever tried too hard, he would hiss at you, scream, get mad at you. And I learned right away because I'm thinking like it's a dog where you're supposed to be like, no, no,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no. He would get even
Yeah.
madder.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so I learned a lot about myself and patience. It took
Yeah.
nearly almost a year for him to finally come up to me and let me hold him.
Sure, yeah. Yeah,
There
yeah.
would be just maybe moments overnight where he
Hmm.
would, if I got up to pee or whatever, I'd sit on the couch with him. He'd let me give him some pets for a limited amount of time. So again, it was a
Sure, yeah.
building of trust,
Hmm.
and just earning that was one of the best. Again, this is the cat of my wife. So sorry, wife. One of the best loves I ever earned was like, because this is the guy
Yeah, yeah.
that hated me,
Oh, I know what you mean.
or
Yeah,
hate,
yeah.
and then we get to, years later that he will cuddle with me, sleep with me, but he still had to respect his space.
Totally.
It's funny that he would only go up to me and my son when he was sleeping, because otherwise he would run away from him.
Yeah.
So just a lot, and also even before my son was born, when my wife and I would go on vacation, I would be like, I miss the cats. And it got to a point where she's like, can you please stop with the cats? They're fine. Like they're fine. She's like, I'm the cat person. Like they're
Yeah,
fine.
yeah. Yeah.
And now we have so many cat pillows and different things. So I
Yeah.
became a
Yeah.
cat person. So we
Yeah.
got back from Chicago for Christmas vacation, and he seemed fine beforehand. And I know he was older, 17, minor
Yeah.
health issues, but then he just got
Hmm.
really sick.
Yeah.
We tried to, help him with medication. We had him at home, so he passed at home. It's kind of crazy. I told you off the air that, my son finally learned, like, to learn to watch the interactions between him and the cats from like when he was not aware of them at all to starting to be aware and loving them too
Yeah.
much. You're
Yeah.
like nice, Harrison, nice,
You gotta be
yes,
nice.
nice, 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 nice. Like just like start hitting them. It's like, and
He's
you're just
like
like,
he's like Bam Bam on the Pebbles, the
yeah.
Flintstones. Bam, bam. Yeah.
So it's just
Little
be
boys, man. Little boys are like next level. Yeah.
so he's doing that with like a dying cat, and like, oh
Right.
my god, what are you doing? Like his first
Right.
day game was Duck Duck Goose, was like with me, a dying cat, and my other cat whose like eye is falling out. He's watching Miss Rachel. I go from Mr. Brownstone to Miss Rachel in my life, and I'm just like, I can't make this up. So, but GB passed, and just look, I
Yeah, it's
cried.
rough.
You know,
Of course. Yeah, yeah,
I
of
cried.
course.
It broke my heart. I would call him my adopted son.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and just my son finally learned. He started. He knows his letters, but he calls him VV. And I'm like, you just learned his name, all these things. So we talk. Slash has shared a story. Megan shares a lot of the stories when he had that cat going through chemo a
Yeah.
few years ago.
Hmm.
Uh, Axel posted. He had a cat, Dexter,
I
that
didn't know that. Wow.
he had three cats. They're all like beautiful. I don't know if they're like white Russian cats. They're just like very unique looking, beautiful cats. And he posted like when Dexter passed, like this real. He doesn't post all the time.
Right.
And I learned in my interview with the. This is a funny way to get interviews, to learn facts through the interviews that I get. When he did an interview, when he did that Looney Tunes episode,
Hmm.
that he wanted it to be drawn a specific way with dog collars around his ankle, and those were from the pets that he had lost. And I learned that
That's
from the
amazing.
writers. So I mean, these are, and he's had pictures taken with like three cats on a hat. Shout out to Margot. I've only seen the picture that she's taken. With
Amazing.
so, I mean, again, Duff. I see they always have those little yippy dogs. The him and Susan.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it really is Guns N' Roses is a animal loving band.
Oh,
And,
yeah, yeah,
and I
yeah.
know that you're constantly sharing pictures with cats,
Yeah. Today I already
foster
shared a bunch
cats.
too. Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you foster cats. I
Yeah.
mean, is there
Yeah.
anything you can talk about, you know, that you're leaving home? And I know some people are like, it's just a cat. They don't even know you're gone. But you leave and like I know you have a million things going on the road, but you gotta miss them. Like, and when you come home, it's different too. A dog could be like, yeah, yeah, they can't wait till you're home, but a cat's
That's
like,
true. Yeah.
cat's like pissed, and you
Yeah.
gotta
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
re-earn their trust again. So
You
I don't
do
know.
have to. Yeah.
Tell me about your cats, if you don't mind.
It is a funny thing that you say that because there is a weird dynamic that happens when I come home. Like it's almost kind of at first they're really excited you're home, and then it almost kind of is a reminder of like, oh, wait a second, where have you been? And then they'll
Yeah.
go through
Are you
this
gonna do it
weird,
again?
yeah, they go through this weird sort of standoffish phase of just, and then it kind of like cycles back. But it's funny that you say that about like earning the trust or like the patience. I also feel like animals, especially with cats, I can't speak for dogs because dogs always just seem kind of friendly and they just want attention and they want love. And certain cats, I find ones that were standoffish can like 5 years later be inseparable from you, or like even a year later sometimes. It's almost like these phases of their existence sort of change. Like the
Yeah.
young one that was wild running around, like we have one that was nuts. Like he was like, this guy is more feral than all of these other cats put together. And now he's the biggest baby and likes to be carried around. And the weird thing is, it's like, I went through, the last time I had a pet, we had a dog many, many years ago, like 15, 20 years ago now. He passed, and it was like so brutal on the whole family that it was just kind of like, on top of the fact that I'm constantly traveling, it just became kind of like, look, we just can't.
Yeah. I
And we
understand.
face that now because during COVID, the first of this flock just walked into our house, and we went around the neighborhood going like, whose cat is this? And long story short, it's our cat. And then you add a bunch more on top of that. But up to that point, it had always been like, we can't have pets because we're constantly away. And when I say
Right.
we, kids are grown, wife's going to come out for, a few weeks in Europe. Now it's like having children where we're like, okay, we have cat sitters. We have like, this one's available then, that one's available here. This is costing money, all that kind of stuff. But we're very lucky to have people who are very reliable and really wonderful people. So, but it becomes a responsibility, and we're not the kind of people who just kind of go like, oh, I don't know, just throw some kibble down and we'll bail
Right.
for 2 weeks. It's like, no, we take it pretty seriously. And my wife is incredible with, placing. We've placed quite a few, I'd like to say but it's mostly her, but my involvement as well as much as, taking in a cat or multiples and then trying to find places for them. And we've been really successful that way. We've also been very unsuccessful, but also successful in keeping a lot of cats because, that's sort of, I was going to say, it's not a negative that we've kept them because in reality, I can't imagine life without the current cast of characters that we have. But I'm sort of like you in that I always liked cats, but I wouldn't necessarily have said I was a cat person. And I had cats like back in the day when I was younger, and I don't think I was quite as hands-on. I was always very sort of, like you said, like, hi, respectfully distant. I'd go to people's houses and they'd have a pet, and I'd be like, hello. I'm the same
Right.
I'm the same with people's kids. It's like, hello. I don't go up and go like, how are you? It's just kind of like, I just figure if that kid wants to come say hello to me or that dog or that cat, they'll come find me. But I since this lot, it's a lot more like we pick them up, we carry them around, we talk to them. I'm a lot more hands-on than I kind of ever have been, only because I just didn't think of it as a thing. My wife is the kind that picks them up and smooches on them and carries them around, and I'm like, oh, I never did that with cats because I just because of the way they are, they're always like,
Yeah.
it's like a casual roommate that you kind of like, hello, how are you? And they walk off in their direction.
Right. Right.
But in doing that, our connection is so much more, tighter and closer and involved. And, it's a bed full of mammals, it's like, it's this nonstop kind of thing. But, in hearing you lose your guys, it's like ours are still 5 is the oldest we have in the house now. So we still have, barring any unforeseen circumstances, should be around for quite a while. But it's one of the terrible things that I went through with my dog. Honestly, it was kind of like, it's kind of like almost like breaking up with a girl and deciding I'm never going to be with anybody again because this hurts too much.
Yeah.
And it seems like you're protecting yourself, but you're also, you know, cutting off a giant part of your life and a giant part of your world. That would be, you have to make yourself available to love these animals and to love another person, because yes, you're saving yourself from being heartbroken, but you're also missing out on a lot of amazing things. And I think it's one of those things that you, I'm sure, can account for, that the time you spent and the time memories that you have are far more important than the pain that it came with. You gave them a good life, and that's, you know, that's really all you can ask for, really, is to have given them a better life than had they, because most of ours come from the street. So it's like, you know, all we'd have to do is be like, you know, the hottest day in Las Vegas. And I'd say, can you imagine if those guys were on the street right now? And just like, I don't know how any animal can survive through this. But, and I think that's true in life. You have to kind of put yourself out there. You know, I guess it's a much bigger conversation, but whether it's pets or your heart in general, it's like the pain at the end of the day, probably, you hope, will be worth the love you give is equal to the love you take. I don't know, whatever. So the love you make, the love you make is equal to the love you take. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically, something like that. You kind of hope that kind of comes out in the wash. So yeah, it's going to suck, and I know exactly what to expect, but it is going to be, you know, the cup will be half full in that, you know, the circle of life and blah, 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 blah is just the way things kind of play out, because, you know, when it comes to parents and relatives and all these things, it's sort of like, if you're lucky enough to be on a straight enough timeline and everything goes the way it's supposed to go, you're going to lose people, and you're going to lose your animals, and you're going to lose things along the way. And that's not necessarily a negative thing. It means that you have surrounded yourself with so much good and positive and loving things that you feel that, you know, so much because you were lucky enough to have that in your life. And that's kind of what I feel like. It's like, well, you know, I was, in retrospect, I was like protecting myself. I didn't want to fall in love with any animals because I knew it was going to be terrifyingly heartbreaking. Our dog died at like 6 or 7. I can't remember exactly how old he was now, but it was very unexpected and very, very young, you know, for what seemed like an otherwise very healthy dog. It just came on quickly, and it was like, it just tore us apart. But that said, it's kind of like, hey, you know what? He had 6 or 7 amazing years, you know, and that's really all you can count on. Yeah.
No, I agree. I know the brothers. I know one of the brothers that's still around. Blackie Clawless, I call him, because he doesn't have any claws in his front paws. Sorry, I was like her mom that declawed them years ago. Yeah, we don't support that.
That was a big thing back in the day. Yeah, I don't prescribe to that now, but it used to be a thing. People used to do it a lot more, I noticed. Yeah.
Yeah, no, none of that. But no, that's how I feel. I feel you know, that's what my wife says, because he's 18. Obviously, I mean, how much longer can he go? But he's relatively okay despite his ailments. My wife is like, I don't know if we can get another one. I'm like, I don't want to live my life without a cat right now. Again, and I don't think Harrison should. The fact that he loves cats.
Yeah.
And I think
well, you do have to think about your allergies. I mean,
I know I'll have to get shots again.
I mean,
we're not going to do 3 again, or maybe even 2.
Maybe.
I think it's just always going to be always going to be 1. But
one and done.
It's opened. You know, it's been special. I was just watching. You know, there was an episode where GB walked in front of my camera during an interview with Fat Mike from NoFX.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, they've been a part of the show. So
I'm surprised none of mine have been around, because they're usually a pain in the ass with this kind of stuff. But they must be like it must be nap time or something for them.
Yeah, Blackie's just chilling on the couch. It's just he's like,
I don't have anybody in here.
I think he's just happy that there isn't a near 2-year-old going like, tail.
Yeah.
Yes, you know the word tail.
Yeah,
Please don't pull it, Harrison. Please. Well, it's just anything. Again, it's opened me up to, you know, just the love of the creature, and that's why I know it was what turned out to be a good situation. Megan sharing videos of packing the cats when they had to temporarily leave their house during the LA fires, and putting the cats the hotel room and then bringing them back. So I'm like, oh, safe little kitties. Everyone's
What a
safe.
nightmare. I mean, well, Slash has had so many animals in his life. I mean, like when I don't think he has any of his snakes anymore, but in the beginning when I first knew him, he still had a couple snakes, maybe one, I don't remember. But I mean, he's notoriously had snakes and lizards and reptiles and a lot of crazy stuff over the years.
I think he's had big cats.
I think there might have been some kind of big cat. I think even, I mean, a bunch of those guys had crazy stuff. And I think it wasn't because he was trying to be, he was like basically a lover and a saver of animals, really is what it was. He really loved rescuing these animals. And he's been doing this as long as, I mean, he brings it up all once in a while, how he like, rescuing cats back in, like from the street back when he was a kid, and it's kind of like, okay, this is our cat now. I'm like, okay, here we go. Probably a very patient mother and parents, but it's it's just kind of how he's wired. And I think he's incredible with those cats. We were there when they first got them too. I remember there was 4 of them in the beginning. It's tragic that they've lost a couple along the way, but that's, again, what great lives those animals have had.
Yeah, couple rock star, some rock star cats. I know my cats are rock stars. My co-hosts, perfect co-hosts at times. But anyway, GB, I love you, buddy. I'll think about him forever. Todd, just thank you so much. I know we went overtime, but it's like,
we always do.
We always do. You're so easy to talk to. You don't have to respond to this, but I know some people say that Dave Grohl, they have their opinion about him now. You are the nicest person in rock and roll.
Oh, thank you. That's very kind of you to say.
Don that title. So I appreciate take that away from him.
Yeah, I'll take it from you. I have to earn it with everybody else. That's just sort of the way it goes. I'm the nicest guy to you in rock and roll. There, I'll accept that. And then I have to earn everybody else's nicest guy along the way. We'll see how that goes. Yeah.
Here, Brett Miller doesn't get enough credit for how talented he is. Love for Todd Kerns. That's on Facebook.
Thank you.
This is from Oliver. Great. He is the best. We got from Mikhail, very good singer, by the way. We got, this is, I guess, a question. It's from Twisted Kister.
Oh, wow.
Any update on Heroes and Monsters or Blackbird Angels, vinyl and future music as well?
Well, Blackbird Angels was sort of a one-off that Tracy and I got up to during COVID. It was very much the tail end of COVID, but we were talking about it, and it was kind of like, yeah, let's make some music. And then, we never really had any intention in touring it. It was just kind of like, friends writing songs, and it was like, yeah, great. And then you put it out there, and then Heroes and Monsters, we might do a run this summer, like a quick batch of dates, probably in Italy. It always ends up being Italy. So I don't know. Honestly, it's like the big focus this year is finishing up the Took record, finishing up a Took record, finishing up the Slash record, and all that kind of stuff for now. And then we will see how it all plays out from there. Hopefully it'll all be kind of like I say, it'll be September before I know it, and I'll put my head up and go. Honestly, as the calendar starts to fill along the way, I won't even really have a stopping point where I look up. It'll just be like crashing into it, and then someday I'll be in rehearsal with Slash, and the guy's going, "Whoa, we're into this already? It's happening? Okay, off we go."
Well, I look forward to following your adventures on social media, Instagram specifically. Todd, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, my friend.
And
always.
One of these days we will meet in person. One of these days.
Yes. And like I'm about to do right now, we'll go for a schmear.
So that does it for this episode of Appetite for Distortion. When will you see the next one? In the words of Axl Rose concerning Chinese democracy, I don't know if soon is the word, but you'll see it.
Thanks to the lame ass security, I'm going home.